very detailed. Thank you, Fran. Many of you here are taking the class for credit, and if you have not attended one of these classes for credit, the requirements are that you attend 6 of the 7 sessions, or you can attend all 7 if you wish, and you take notes as the evening goes on, and whatever type of notes are best for you. Some people like to outline, some have very detailed notes, whatever is good and meaningful to you. And at the end of each session, you turn your notes in to Fran and I back here, and we will have them checked off for the next session, so you'll pick them up as you come in. We ask that everyone sign in, whether you're taking the class for credit or not. It helps us keep track of the audience size, and also is a way that we check to make sure that the students who are attending for credit are actually here. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Mike Manning, who will present our program tonight. He will focus on the Homestead Act and some farm facts of Jasper County. I'm the one that really pushed for this class because I'm a Jasper County farm girl, and I find this to be a really interesting topic. It's what brought people to our area, the farm, and we want to learn all we can about it. So, Mr. Mike Manning, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, now if I don't fumble around with all this new technology, hopefully we'll be able to make at least an hour and a half's class out of this. I do have to tell you that without the help of Anita, we probably wouldn't be where we're at today. And I've also seen some of the farm owners that are out here in the crowd, and I'm going to have to give them some credit for coming tonight. They're putting the pressure on me because I know that I've got pretty big shoes to fill to try and at least live up to what they're going to be talking about. How many of you guys are currently involved in agriculture right now? If you would, just raise your hand so that I get a flavor, at least of what I've got as far as an audience. Okay, it kind of looks like all the Aggies are sitting over here on the left-hand side of the class, and then we've got everybody else over here. Well, I'm going to try some probably a little different technique as far as presenting information to you tonight. One part of it probably will be really tiring to you, and I apologize for that, but the other part's going to be interactive because I'm going to actually have you help me teach part of this class. And I think it'll be fun for everybody that's here. But one of the things that I think that we have to do is find out, number one, what is agriculture and what does it mean to Jasper County? We're really focusing on Jasper County, and frankly, we have our roots in agriculture. I'm going to show you some statistics from the county, and then I'm going to show you some historical trends as far as agriculture and what's happened in Jasper County, and then we'll talk a little bit about the application process, what it actually means to have a Hoosier homestead. The people out here, they could tell you, and they probably will. They'll probably reiterate most of these facts that I'm going to share with you tonight. See if I can do this right. Probably just turn my volume up. Okay, help me out here. See if I can figure out. Oh, there we go. Do I hit the zoom? Is that right? Oh, it's coming. Oh, you guys can't see the answers yet. Boy, this is... I'm really going to... I've never done this before, not with this. Okay, Jasper County. This is actually... I'll have to... Boy. There we go. Well, you guys just bear with me, okay? Here we go. Now I can see it. Don't pay any attention to the little insignias up here on my folder, but do pay attention to what I've got. As you can see, in 1990, on our census population, and most of this is actually facts that are taken from the Ag Statistics Office down at Purdue University. But Jasper County, our county profile, we rank 26,900 as far as our population. Now, most people would say ho-hum whenever they see that population, because obviously you can see that we're ranked 58th. How many counties are there in the state of Indiana? Okay, I hear some. We got some people that are back there in the back, and they're pretty sharp. They know that there's 92 counties in the state, so you can see obviously that we're not a major player right now as far as population, are we? Especially whenever you look at some of the other metro areas that are out there. But I will tell you, we just finished doing a plan of work program, and we do have one of the fastest growing parts of our county. Actually, it's one of the fastest growing areas in the state. And that would be up in the Keener Township area. Their population has grown by 50% since 1990. So we're not only going to be dealing with agriculture and what agriculture is, but we're also going to be dealing with what the future of Jasper County is, and that's one of the things that some of the people that I work with are doing right now. In 1992, we had 716 farms, and so that means that we ranked 40th out of the 92 counties with the number of farms that we have in Jasper County. This is in the state. In 1992, we farmed 301,962 acres. That was second most in the state, okay? As far as land area, where does Jasper County rank? Come on, some of you old sages. I know you guys have been here a lot longer than I have. I will tell you that I moved to Jasper County in 1991. Well, we're going to cover that in just a second. We're close. Actually, the weather has hurt us the last couple of years as far as where we fall. I always like, whenever I teach fourth graders and they come out and we have springtime on the farm, and I actually have a chance to talk to the kids about corn and soybeans. And I can always tell them, you know, we hold this program right after the NCAA finals, and I tell them that, you know, what does the winning team always say? They say, we're number one, right? You know, they hold their finger up high and they shake it, and I tell these little kids, you guys can say that too, because you live in Jasper County, and usually we are number one in corn production in the state of Indiana. But the last couple of years have been hard on us there. We actually, in land area, rank third. Okay, we're the third largest land area county in the state of Indiana. In 1996, can you guys still see this? I'm afraid to touch anything because I'm afraid you won't be able to see it after I get done touching this. You can see my hand. Okay. In 1996, we planted 157,000 acres of corn, and we yielded 125 bushels per acre. We ranked second in the state. Now, I'm going to tell you that this is an environmental thing, okay? Normally, it's kind of a battle between White County and Jasper County as far as who is number one in corn production. And they've actually nudged us out the last couple of years. Soybeans, we plant 102,000 acres, 200, and we actually rank 11th in the state. And you can see the total bushels over there. We actually yielded about 39 bushels per acre. And you can ask some of these farmers in the group. You guys have probably done better than that, haven't you? You've done a lot worse too, haven't you? Okay. So you can see that, you know, we're looking and we're talking about averages. And whenever I give you some of these figures, I actually have some information that I find quite fascinating. I actually went back into the archives and I dug out some of my agricultural facts. And Tom got a chance to get a sneak preview this afternoon because he worked on his program a little bit. But I think it's quite fascinating how agriculture's changed over the years. Wheat, we planted 4,000 acres. You can see that, you know, we're not a major player when it comes to wheat production, are we? We actually leave most of that to the southwest portion of the state of Indiana. We rank 77th. Hay production, 3,000 acres. We rank 72nd. This is kind of interesting, though. I'll put up our cash receipts. You can see in crops we rank third, livestock 15th, but overall we rank 6th in cash receipts. $103,184,000. That should make people like Steve Torbett feel pretty good because he knows that we actually have some cash flow whenever we talk about what's going on out here in agriculture. Okay? So this is a county profile, and I think you guys really need to have some of this background, especially this side of the room. Okay? You guys need to know what's going on as far as agriculture, because whenever these guys come up and start telling you the history, I think you're going to find it fascinating, and you're going to be surprised how far we've come in such a short period of time. Okay, let's talk about the number of farms in Indiana. Now, what do you suppose has happened with the number of farms in Indiana? You guys up here, you're really being quiet in front, and so we're going to pick on you guys. What's happened to the number of farms in Indiana? Or nationwide? What do you think?
Hasn't it decreased?
Okay, it's decreased. What's happened to the size of farms?
We're getting bigger.
Okay, they're getting larger. Okay, you guys have all heard the predicaments of the family farms, haven't you? And you've all lamented that, and you've probably seen that in some of the news stories that have been written. But actually, that's a fact, is that the number of farms in the state of Indiana has been on the decrease. When we talk about the number of farms in Indiana, I've got a overhead that I'm going to put up here. Okay, in 1910, we had 215,000 farms, and the average farm size was 98 acres. Okay, so we had people that were out there, they were supporting their families on 98 acres. Now, what do you suppose they were doing? That probably took them at least, what, 2 days to plant that? Well, how long does it take you guys to plant?
1 day.
1 day for 98 acres, okay? So they did a lot of loafing back then, didn't they? Huh?
It only goes so fast.
That's right. I have to tell you a story. You know, one time I was teaching a private applicator training, and I have to tell this because it was on a friend of mine, and we were trying to calibrate a granular insecticide applicator. And the friend of mine was bent over, and he was telling this guy, you know, we had a certain formula, and you had to figure out the ground speed, and the guy had ground speed at 2 miles an hour. And the friend of mine said, don't you think that that's just a little bit slow? And he said, not to the horse, it's not. Okay? So you have to realize that they weren't doing things the same way that we were doing things right now. Okay? That's one of the big differences that we've had in agriculture. There's been a major, major change in technology over the years. Now, how many, I'm going to pick on some people here. How many of you guys said that you're not involved in agriculture? Raise your hands high, okay, so that I can really pick you guys out. Okay, in the white hat, you said you were not involved in agriculture. What's your name?
Paul.
Paul. Okay, Paul, where are you from? DeMott. Now, how far back in your roots do you have to go to get involved in agriculture? Okay, 4 or 5 generations, and that's probably less the standard. That's even farther removed from agriculture than most people probably would even think about. What about some of the rest of you that raised your hand and said you were not involved in agriculture? Who else? You said you weren't? Where are you from? Around Chicago, okay. One of the things that I think that we've seen as far as changing technology and also as far as attitudes, you guys think attitudes in farming have changed any? You think attitudes of, or at least perceptions of people that aren't involved in agriculture, have they changed any? Okay, people not involved in agriculture, how many of you guys believe that these guys are out there poisoning the ground and they're really making things bad for you? Okay. We don't have too many answers out here. You know, one of the things, and I have a chance to talk to a lot of different agricultural groups, and one of the things that I think that everybody, and it's good to have both sides together. I think this is really neat to have a group where you actually have two sides that actually come together and can actually share a common interest. But one of the things that you have to realize is that these people are out there and their families are out there. They have to be licensed to do all the applications that they make out there on their farms, and so they're doing things. And not only that, whenever they buy any type of inputs, is it expensive? Sure is. Okay, it's expensive, and so they're trying to do things the best that they can. They're trying to do them according to the way legally that they're supposed to be done. So I think that's kind of fascinating. And I think that we've lost some of our touch as far as agriculture and our agricultural roots because people aren't as close to the farm as they used to be. They said now that you can probably go back 2 to 3 generations, and it used to be that people remembered going back on the farm. They remembered going out and sitting under the shade tree and drinking lemonade and visiting, and that was a big part of our culture. I mean, people had some of the best times of their lives playing in the barns, going up in the hay mows, playing with their cousins on the farm, and now that doesn't happen anymore. You guys remember any of those stories? You ever remember that? Sure you do. Well, I'm going to show you some trends and why things aren't the same anymore. In 1920, okay, this is 10 years, we lost 5,000 farms and the average farm size has increased just a little bit. Okay, we're not seeing a drastic change, are we? Not a huge change. I'm going to jump you several years into the future, okay? Guess where we're going, Steve? We're going to 1990, okay? We are into the future, okay? 1990. Now we have 68,000 farms. We're almost a fourth of where we were. And we're farming 240 acres. So farm size is on the increase. And number of farms is on the decrease. 1993, we've lost another 5,000. So this trend, we're not projecting this trend to really change a lot as we look into the future. 254 acres. In 1997, we're down to 62,000 farms in the state of Indiana, and we got an average of 256 acres per farm. I would venture to guess that most of the farmers that we have in this room are probably farming a few more acres than 256. You're probably making that average go up a little bit. Is that true or false? True, isn't it? Now let's look at what's happened as far as our production side. You think we've seen any changes in production? Jim, don't you sell seed corn?
Yeah.
Are things better now than they used to be?
As long as you use the right seed.
As long as you use the right seed. Now, in about 3 weeks, you guys will have a chance. You can do all the advertisement that you want. Okay? Corn for grain. This is from 1929, okay? Now look at the production that we had. We produced 2,351,000 bushels in the state of Indiana. Now I don't know how many bushels Pleasant Ridge Elevator holds or how many they handle in the fall. Huh? What portion of that you think they handle? What do you think? Look at that. 73,000 acres of corn were produced, and we averaged 32 bushels an acre. Now, really, the only time that I can ever think about raising 32 bushels to the acre, and Don, maybe you can help me. You guys remember 1988? There may have been some places out there in 1988, and that was a drought year. It was a terrible year for farmers. It wasn't good for people either. It was too hot, wasn't it? Okay, so you know that technology has definitely improved us a little bit. Now I'm going to jump this up in 10-year increments. Now look at the difference as far as bushels produced just in 10 years. And they say that research and development doesn't pay. Look at that. Okay, we're up to 4 million, almost 5 million bushels, and we're averaging 55 bushels per acre on our farms. So not only are we, look at this, not only are we increasing our bushels, we're actually able to feed the world a little better, aren't we? We're doing a little better job. I'm just going to go ahead and 10 years later. Now we haven't had much change as far as technology, and I will tell you that I've got every year from 1929, but I decided that would be such a huge chart that I was just going to go in 10-year increments. And so essentially what this could be is a weather year, but chances are that you weren't seeing that much difference as far as bushels produced. So technology hadn't changed, or at least genetics. 1959, we're up to 68 bushels per acre, and we're producing 9 million bushels. Okay? Let's jump it up. In 69, Okay, now's about the time that Steve Torbett was crawling around on the wagons, okay, and you probably were, weren't you? You weren't being real safe about it, but he was crawling around on the wagons, okay? We're up to 12 million bushels, and we're averaging 115 bushels. Now look at that. That's almost staggering, isn't it, as far as production? And look what's happened in the last 5 decades as far as just production per acre. We came a long way from putting a seed in the ground and dropping in a couple of fish, haven't we? Okay, we're making a real large difference as far as what's happened. In 1996, this was last year, 2 years ago now, 19 million bushels, 157,000 and 125 bushels per acre. So you can see that actually things have changed a lot, haven't they? What's happened on the soybean side? And essentially what I did was pull off crops that I thought probably would interest most of you, especially in the farming community. Soybeans. Now look at this. Now Tom, you can't tell them, okay? I don't want you to tell them what the answer is because I know that you know. Somebody from over here, why don't we have any data from 1929? Huh?
Beans are raised in was all for hay.
Absolutely, okay. The beans that were raised then were for hay. They were a very minor importance as far as a crop. We really didn't raise too many soybeans except other than for hay. And so we didn't really keep track of them. They weren't really important. We didn't really think about cooking oil and all the other uses that you have for soybeans. You know, think about the meal. What's the meal market now as far as feed? You know, we were actually mowing them down. And I will tell you, how many of you guys have ever baled soybean hay? Don, you have? That's pretty fun, isn't it? It's not very itchy, is it? Oh boy, I'll tell you, that stuff can be mean. Okay, 1937, we harvested 6,400 acres in the state of Indiana, and we averaged 14 bushels per acre. I'd be willing to bet that there's not too many farmers in Jasper County, Indiana, that would be very happy with 14 bushels per acre anymore. But they probably have harvested that on some sand hills and some places that probably were a little out of whack. 1939, now we're making some changes. I moved 2 years here. And what kind of things were going on in the late 30s, early 40s? Okay, you think they found some other uses for soybeans other than just for hay now? I think they have. 1939, 18,500 bushels that were grown in the state of Indiana. We're still not yielding a whole lot as far as bushels per acre. Look at this. I'll just pull this down. We've come a long way as far as number of acres. And we've come a long way as far as the yield. And the yield's probably primarily the thing that I wanted to point out. We've really come a long way on our yield and our harvested acres. Now we've talked about what we actually had. How many of you guys think farmers were making a killing back then? How many people, you know, I think that we've had, some folks do think that farmers are fairly wealthy. How many people really have that perception? Oh, one person back in the back.
I used to. And because you have to remember, I'm coming from Chicago, right?
Okay.
Okay, so it all, but I still was green on the other side of the fence. And then I went down to school, Southern Illinois, and I had to do one of the assignments for one of my classes was to do an inventory of one of the local farms. And I did that. And there is a lot of money involved in farming.
Okay.
Equipment, but there's nothing in their hand. You know what it's not tangible.
Can you guys relate to that?
There's a lot of money on the financial statement.
Yes.
Not much in the farm.
Yes.
Okay. So, Steve, can you relate to that? Steve is an agricultural lender here in the community, and so he deals with that on a day-to-day basis. And these guys that are farming, you guys deal with it on a day-to-day basis as well. There is a lot of money that actually goes through whenever you look at a cash flow. But sometimes years can be pretty tight, can't they? I'm going to show you some information that probably will be interesting. I hope it is. But these are historic prices, and these are prices that farmers receive for their commodities. Okay, so we'll see why they're so wealthy. Jim, do you have any idea who would have been farming your farm in 1908? Okay, you have any idea what he probably got paid for a bushel of corn?
I saw it, but I forget what it was.
Okay, he didn't get paid a lot, I'll tell you that.
During the Depression, it's 5 or 10 cents a bushel.
Okay.
People
I'd say it's over $1.
that they burned corn instead of coal, because coal was higher price.
Okay, so you can see that there have been times that things have been pretty lean. Now what I did was go on the 1908 and I went on 10-year increments, and so it probably would have been fascinating if I'd have stayed in the 1920s and went every year up to the 1940s.
In 31, we topped the market in Chicago, hogs at $3.05 a hundred.
Okay. That was pretty cheap, wasn't it?
What's that? Never during the depth of the Depression.
Okay, that was in the...
Homestead Act for city people.
Okay,
Is that 100 pounds?
that was per 100 pounds.
$3.05 a hundred.
So a 200-pound pig would be worth what? $6.10, right?
10 cents.
You were getting a big check, weren't you?
No, but I'll tell you what, I worked for that guy. I was about 16 then, and I worked for $20 a month for room and board. In the summertime, in the wintertime, just worked for my board.
Okay.
Still was able to save a little bit of money. I mean, not $100 or anything like that, but I had a little money in my pocket. Believe it or not.
Okay. 1908. We're going to put it up here. And here's the storyline. In 1908, this is January corn, okay? This was January of 1908. Chicago Board of Trade price, okay? 47 cents a bushel. Now you guys remember the yields? What were the yields we were getting back then? Okay, 20 to 25 bushels. Figure that out. They weren't making a whole lot, okay, off an acre of land, were they? And that's not counting deducting your input costs.
Didn't have so much expense either.
Didn't have to buy a tractor.
Well, we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. We're going to find out what the advantages were to go into a tractor, if in fact that's what you wanted to do. 1918, we had a little bit of a rally in the market, it looks like, and corn actually on January of 1918 was $1.26. Okay, that's during the war. Soybeans, they were $3.75, and if that was if there were any beans, okay, for sale. Remember, we didn't have any historical records really of soybeans until later on in Jasper County. Hogs per hundredweight, $15, okay? So we're moving on up there. And cattle were $8.60 per hundredweight. So it doesn't take a mathematical genius to figure out that you were getting about $30.20 for a 200-pound pig. Okay? Think about that, and I don't know what it would have cost you to actually have the thing processed. Of course, you got to remember back then people probably didn't have deep freezes, and so what'd they do with it?
Well, right in front of Jim's mother's house,
Mm-hmm.
down the road between where he lives and where his mother lives, Granddad Moody bought 160 acres there during that time. I don't know what he paid for it exactly. I think it was $70. But anyway, he planted 160 acres, broke it up to wheat during the war, and paid for it.
Okay.
Was that's work on a price, and that's wrong.
Okay, yeah,
For
and
an average.
Right, but all I did was just, there was no way I could put every year in, and I do apologize for that. That probably throws you off a little bit. 1928. Now, our prices have dropped back a little bit now in 1928, and this is actually before the Depression hit. 72 cents on a bushel of corn, $1.55 on a bushel of soybeans. Hogs were $8. Okay, we're dropped back down. So there's our explanation for why it's a little bit higher 10 years previous. 1938. Doesn't look like things down on the farm improved just a whole lot, did it?
Well, that's the tail end of the Depression.
Okay, 1938, 47-cent corn. We're back to the same 1908 prices. You'd have to plant Pioneer to do that, wouldn't you, Jim? I tell you. Okay, hogs, $8 and $7 on cattle. Now I'm just going to reel these off. 48, $2.44 on corn, $4.21 on beans, $22 on hogs now. Hogs have rallied a little bit. Cattle have made a jump too. 1958, look at this. Talk about it, fluctuations in the market. It would be pretty hard to plan into the future and actually put together a farm plan and go to Steve and tell him you wanted a loan, wouldn't it? You look at the livestock prices, though, and they're holding fairly steady, at least for that last 10 years. 68, okay, 102 on corn, 250 on beans, 78. I'm just going to go ahead and take the sheet down. Okay, there's your historic prices. Now, one of the things that I think would have been fascinating, I didn't really have time to do this, but would have been to actually take input prices and find out how much difference there is. And how many of you guys know, most of you guys have taken economics classes, haven't you? You guys understand when I'm talking about input prices, what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the things that you have to pay for as far as machinery and seed and feed and some of those things that are going to cost you money as you farm. And I think it would have been interesting to see how much more they've increased comparative to market prices. And you always hear farmers talk about parity, market parity. It probably isn't there whenever you look at their inputs compared to what they get, okay? So keep that in mind whenever you think about agriculture in general as far as crops and livestock. Yes?
That 1948, there you go, corn 244.
Mm-hmm.
That was a driven market plan.
Okay. Now we're going to do something a little bit different. Well, I'm going to put this up here. I thought this was kind of interesting to me, and you guys may not be able to see it, and if you can, I apologize ahead of time. But I actually was rooting around in my office, and I thought, now what could I talk about? We're talking about homestead farms, and we're talking about farms that have been around for at least 100 years to even be eligible to be considered a homestead. And so I thought, out of all the things that I have as far as resource material in my office, I pulled out a Purdue agricultural fact book from 1924. Now, some things haven't changed a lot in agriculture, but other things have. And some of you guys, I'm willing to bet, have lived through a lot of changes in agriculture. But it's interesting to me, since I do work for Purdue and I actually work in the field of agriculture, it's interesting to me to go back and find some of the things that they were putting down as far as advantages. Can you guys read that? These are comparative advantages. Okay, I'll just read them. They were comparing advantages of horses and tractors. Okay, and I guess now as I look back, I can't hardly believe that they even put it in print. Can you read that? Number one, it saves a man and a horse labor. This is what a tractor does, okay? Number two, it does heavier work and is not bothered by heat or flies. Okay? Now, this is some of the most current cutting-edge agricultural information that they had back then. Number three, it can do a large amount of work in rush seasons. Number four, it can get the ground in better shape and the crops in at the right time. And number five, it actually does belt work, and the horse couldn't do that. The disadvantages, too expensive. Steve, have you ever heard a farmer say a tractor's too expensive? Maybe that's probably what he tells them, okay? Number two, it's not adapted to enough kinds of work. Number 3, it's not reliable, especially in the hands of most farm help. I bet farmers have said that too. I bet I even know farmers that have said that about their sons sometimes when they send them out on the tractor. And number 4 is it packs the ground, and I know that that's one of the things that we still contend with. Because whenever we listen to agronomists and we hear them talk, we actually are still dealing with compaction. That's one of the number 1 problems out there, or nemesis that we deal with whenever we raise crops. Now what I want to do, see how much time we have. All right, screen. All right, something worked up here for me. I must be doing something right. Okay, I think we have markers up here. And we're going to do something different. This is where you guys get to interact. Okay, now what we've got is a timeline up here, and I want each one of you to come up. Okay, we've got 4 markers, so you guys can come up in shifts a little bit. I don't want you to talk to each other, okay, because you are going to do this class yourself, and you're going to get a lot of satisfaction out of doing this. But I want you to come up here, and I want you to take a marker, and I want you to draw 3 things on this timeline from the year 1900 until the year 1990 of things that have changed in agriculture, and then we're going to talk about how that's probably helped as far as social, economic, or cultural, and if it's made any changes. Okay, and that should be relatively easy. But I don't want you to write it, you've got to draw a picture. Because then what we're going to do is we're going to go back through here, and you guys are going to voluntarily raise your hand, and you're going to tell me who put that picture up there. And it can be stick figures. It doesn't have to be, I'm not going to judge your artwork. But I want you to just come down here and put down 3 things. And then we'll just go through the room, and it's going to be interesting to find out, because we've got some people in here that have seen a lot of changes in agriculture. But I want you guys to put down the things that you think, the 3 most important things that have affected agriculture in the whole timeline. You have got a pretty broad span you can probably put down. Some of you guys may not know. Yes?
Put it by the date.
Yeah, just put it close to the date where you think that happened. Okay.
Let me think when this will be.
Don't be bashful, okay? This will give you a chance to stand up and stretch a little bit.
Oops, I forget what it looks like. Oh, God, it looks like a...
It looks like a skateboard.
Oh, it is a skateboard.
Well, it looks like one.
What's a danger danger. Don't.
Come on, you guys. Don't be shy. Everybody gets the chance. Just come up and then take one of these out of their hand, because they'll be done pretty shortly. Oh, I think I know what that is. See, and some of our agriculturists will be able to help you out if they think that you've got it in the wrong time period. I think I know what that
My
is.
dad used to sell that. That's supposed to be at Microsoft.
Okay, her dad used to sell Brand X, okay? You guys don't think agriculture's affected you at all?
I'm not going to do it. I found something I can draw.
Oh, well.
I wasn't around here yet.
Well, he's not going to do that. You want to draw a picture up here?
Sure. I might draw last.
I think he's here to arrest you, Tom. Now, I want some of you guys that are involved in agriculture to come up here and help me out, okay? Don't just sit back.
What's the symbol of electricity?
Just put up some TV poles, or put up some poles with lines on them. Rural electrification. I think maybe that just might have just got taken.
They gotta go make calls.
All right.
Look, that is. Do you know what that is?
REA, probably. How's that?
Well, it's kind of machinery.
See, and you thought this was going to be all lecture, didn't you? Oh, you can surely think of 3 things in your lifetime that have something's changed in agriculture. Well, that's true. Go up there and put a dollar sign down where you think that probably happened.
Were they digging irrigation ditches well before 1900? Or, you know, most of our, I know about up in our areas, like the river, they started dredging those in 1912, 13, I guess, around there. And obviously they started dredging all the swamp. They digging ditches all over the place.
Oh, I'm sure they were. Yep. Yeah, put it down. Draw that up there. I'll put a shovel up there, then you can explain that. You can draw a shovel.
Oh, you don't have it?
Here's one right here. No, I don't want to get out of that. Oh, look, now you can... Yeah, he was going to go up and draw a shovel. Pardon me? See, nobody's put that on there. What year? Ask one of those guys. They're going to come along. Here, you guys have got a question over here. They want to know where the reaper is.
What a reaper is.
When did it come along, the mechanized?
You mean combine?
Yeah.
I bet you don't know what it is, do you?
Go up and draw that. What year?
1831.
1831. Well, that was pretty early.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why I know.
Or 19. Is that right? Okay.
I tore them down in 1931.
Okay, so it was before that then. Well before that. He said it was in the 1830s that they actually started that. And I knew it was a long time before I ever started. What? The combine? You guys should remember that. Well, you can put it... Can't you put it in the decade, though?
It's about 1950, late, middle 40s, 50.
The decade?
Because my dad used to have a threshing machine, and I think that's how we got his first combine. It was in the late.
Okay, I want everybody that really has got a desire to come up here and put a picture up here. I know I've probably prodded some of you along. Okay.
Which year did they sell the drill?
Well, that was in the 1800s, probably, as far as, yeah, I would guess that the drill probably was. They're trying to decide when the combine was invented. To encourage one of those guys. These guys think that you guys need to come up here and put a combine down because they're very interested in that. They want to know when that was, okay? Have we got it down here? Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, I know what that is. Okay, now we're going to have that attempt.
This all right on there?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Okay, now that's the reaper, right? You're not supposed to write, though. You're supposed to draw.
Well, all right, I'll do it.
He just got a D in the class. I should have one other marker out here somewhere without a cap. A green one. There's a blue one. There's the cap for that.
Not doing very good.
Okay. All right, there's there's the reaper. Where do you think the combine was? The self-propelled combine. We'll make it a little tougher. Maybe easier.
About in here,
Okay.
there was some earlier.
There, you want me to put a picture of one?
I think out west they had combines lots earlier than we did.
Okay.
But I'd say
Okay, all right.
It's 10 to each. We take a break. If you give me a magic marker, I'll draw a picture.
Okay, I'll tell you what. It's 10 till 8. Everybody can take a potty break, grab another cup of coffee if you would like. And then what we're going to do is when we come back in, we're going to go across this timeline and we're going to talk about some of the changes that occurred. And I just thought this might be kind of a neat exercise because there's a lot of change that's happened in the last 100 years. And so when we talk about Hoosier homesteads and farms that are over 100 years old, think about how much change that oh, we've got a house over here. Air-conditioned cabs, let me tell you, they didn't come along probably until after the 70s. 70s probably. Okay. All right, I know what that is.
what is electricity?
We've got that right here. Yeah, we've got it.
That's about right.
Yep,
39.
for REA. Yeah.
Okay, here's your magic marker.
Okay, so let's take about a 5 to 10 minute break. Everybody stand up, stretch, go get something to drink. That's what reality, or lack thereof for some of us. What I want you to do is you're going to have to, this is really kind of the confession time that you have to be really honest with me and you have to admit which pictures that you drew because there's no way that I can remember. I think we do have it on film, right? And so if we have to go back and actually roll the film and find out who drew these, we will. But what I want you to do is whoever, be honest with me and somebody tell me. I mean, we actually went back a little farther than 1900, okay? So we went back to about 1830 and somebody came up here and drew, actually they wrote on it. They weren't supposed to, okay? I think it's a reaper, okay? Go ahead and fill us in.
What am I supposed to do?
Tell me what that is and what significant change did that make to agriculture?
Well, before that, they did the reaping with the old side. And then they got a mowing machine. And the mowing machine stuff just fell down and there was no way of getting it in bundles without it being a tangled up mess, so they didn't do that. And so they've got this wheel that square thing on the top, but it's supposed to be slats, is turned around and then knocked these ends down and then cut it off.
Okay.
And then it went up and went to the knotter, and that's supposed to be a bundle there on the left-hand side from here.
This? That's not a fire. Okay.
Bundle
That's a bundle.
of that grain, and then there's a kicker that tied the knot, threw it out,
Okay.
and dumped it off.
You think that sped up the farming process?
Oh boy.
Okay.
You work like the devil to do an acre a day with the side. I mean, and that was hot weather in the summertime, and that was hard work. So that made all the difference in the world. That you could do 15. There's a lot of difference. And then, well, actually, that guy that invented that, Cyrus McCormick, hit one of my relatives. And that happened to be when he landed in Plano, when I went up north, and he built those factories. That was the start of International Harvester. He built those 6 or 7 buildings in 1830 or 31, 1891, 1931. I tore them down.
Okay.
At the time, but you found out later that that's what it was.
Okay, so the mechanization made a great big difference as far as agriculture was concerned. Somebody put in 1890 over here. We have quite an artistic.
It didn't really follow the track. But anyway,
Okay.
It's why we're here.
That'll just be a half a letter grade.
Okay.
Okay.
It's why we're here, because that would be 100 years ago. And
Okay.
to say Hoosier Homesteaders have to be 100 years or more old.
Okay, there you go.
So that's a bar.
There you go.
Did barbed wire come out, or was that before? When-
Barbed wire was
well,
probably,
yeah, the wire
yeah, that was probably a little before that.
1870 maybe.
Jim, come on, help me out here. It was a long time before I was born, I know that, okay? Okay, now we're going to move up here to 1910, and I know who drew this, so you can't hide, okay?
I know on the northern part of the county, what little I knew about agriculture, that's when they really started dredging the Kankakee, which I guess technically is what the Marble Towers ditch now, and they're starting to buy the land in large chunks extremely cheap. Those people who had the initiative start digging the ditches, they will start parsing it off.
Okay. That is some of the history of the county, you know, and that's how DeMott in that area was actually settled, is that was what? Part of a marsh, wasn't it? And before they actually drained that.
That was 1870.
Okay, that was, he wasn't sure about when that happened, but he did know that was part of the DeMott history, and it was actually drained up there.
The marsh was bought, was owned by the government.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last piece of ground east of the Mississippi that the Indians lived on. The government moved the Indians off in 1838, and the Trail of Tears moved west of the Mississippi.
Okay.
And then eventually, in 1837 is when the Parkinsons and the Barclay settled on the ridge. They were some of the very first farmers in the county, and then they settled on that ridge. But north of that ridge wasn't sold by wasn't purchased by the government until in the 1850s and close to the 60s.
Okay.
Then they had the Civil War come along.
Right.
That shut that off. And then in 1870, Betty's grandfather, Isaac D. Dunn, came up, who was an attorney, and some of the people that had bought some of that land up there, they were supposed to drain it. And people sold it, people bought it, and they didn't drain it, and the money disappeared. And they were afraid that their title would be bad, so they sent Isaac Dunn up to represent them at Taft in that area of Taft. And in 1870, he lived there permanently in 1872. He was one of the developers of that country. And it was one of the first train that came through went from Wheatfield northeast. I don't know where it went to, but anyway, the track was across, just directly northeast. And on that, Mr. Dunn had about 1,600 acres on the south side of the river, and I don't know how much he looked after north of the river. But anyway, he built the Dunn's Bridge from the Chicago World's Fair. Some of the round buildings up there, he got some of them, and that was the size of the bridge.
Okay.
And
You're learning a lot now about this, aren't you? Are you taking notes?
Later, they built a railroad through what's Taft, Wheatfield, and DeMott, running almost straight back to east and west. And when they built that railroad, he built a town, and they called it Dunville. Well, Dunville and Danville sounded so much alike that the post office asked him to change it. So he changed it to his brother-in-law's name, which was Taft. And he was a one-time ambassador to Sweden.
Okay.
That's where Taft comes from.
All right. Boy, now there's a history lesson right there. Okay, now we're going to move on past the 1910s, and we're going to go to 1920.
That's supposed to be a light bulb.
Okay.
I could be totally wrong. I thought it was 20 or 30, but I think the blue, is that dry cord?
Yeah, I think Tom Neasy drew that. That was supposed to represent rural electrification. Now, how many of you folks remember rural electrification? Did that make a difference on the farm?
Well, we didn't get it until the 40s.
Okay.
We moved out there and
Somebody said 1933 is when they first had it.
well,
Would that be?
39 was where he lives.
Okay.
39 is where it came. We
Okay.
live next door to him.
So, I mean, it didn't happen overnight, and you sure didn't go out there and put all those poles and all those lines up. So it was over a span of time. But let me tell you, electrification made a huge difference as far as the way rural people lived.
Biggest thing it made, biggest difference of all it made was handling the water. Boy, I'm telling you, water is son of a gun to handle by hand.
Handling water.
Pumping the water for 100 stock, 30 stock, they're dry and hot in the summertime.
Take a long time to pump that out by hand, didn't it?
Refrigeration coming in, what, 40?
Refrigeration.
We had refrigerator when we moved there in 45.
Okay.
Betty's mother in town had ice box.
Yep. And that's where they delivered the ice, and there you go. And that's how you kept it cool. Okay, somebody's got I think an ear of corn up there.
When they got hybrid seed corns, they used to get their seed, they'd go out to the crib and pick out the biggest ears and break the ends off and shell them off by hand, the big kernels out of the centers. Then they started inbreeding corn and making hybrid seed corn. And George said the first bags sold for $6 a bag. Now they go up as high as $138 a bag.
$138 a bag for some of you folks that aren't buying seed corn. How many acres can you plant out of that, Jim?
About 3 acres a bag.
About 3 acres, okay.
That's $40 an acre. That's
Okay.
They have so many things.
Did you hear that? That was a terrible price too, Jim. Okay. But hybrid seed corn definitely did. And you remember the historical yields that we had? You remember what happened whenever we all of a sudden these decades had changed and we had the introduction of some of this technology? And that is some of the technology, yes?
I wonder, like you hear, they used to say like the corn should be knee-high by the 4th of July. Like, when was that? I mean, now corn is, that must have been before the hybrid corn because,
That's
I mean, that's a bad,
No, that's not just in Oklahoma. I used to hear that growing up. Steve, you probably did too.
Part of that, I think, is that's when they planted corn in the middle of May.
Yep.
Now you plant it in the middle of April, so you got to
I thought.
Of course, you can plant it in the middle of April and it still doesn't come up till the middle of May. And last year was probably a pretty good example of that. Okay?
They used to not plant corn till the 10th of May.
Right.
Before that, all year.
And right now, I mean, let's face it, you guys that are out there planting corn, you know, the genetics and the varieties that you have, I'll bet you that 50 years ago you wouldn't have dreamed of planting corn back in the middle of April and then let it sit there and get wet and be cold like it was last year. Because I don't think there had been much out there. Yeah, we weren't sure what was going to happen last year either. Okay, now it looks like we've got a cat on its back. I'm not really sure. Who did this?
That's me, and an artist I'm not.
Okay.
That's about the time of the final demise of the workforce on the farm.
Oh. Boy, you could have. All right, let's give her a round of applause. You could have put him out to pasture. Okay.
It made a big difference in the way farming was done, because I remember my folks, even though they did have a tractor before that, they still, like when they were picking corn and that sort of stuff, you could put the team in the field and the team would go down the row and you could pick the corn and throw it in the thing. You didn't have to keep getting off and on the tractor. And so, but about late 40s, that was finally the end of them. I remember when they sold the last of the horses, that was a sad time.
Okay, the demise of the horses. Oh boy. All right, I think we have our mechanized combine here, introduced in the early 40s, right? And that probably sped us up. The self-propelled combine. Is that right? And you came up and drew that. This. It looks like an anteater. Okay? I use my imagination a lot, okay?
Didn't have a cap on it.
Oh yeah, I guess, what is this, another light bulb?
It looks like a spaceship.
Who put that up there?
I did, that's, I don't know all the symbols of electricity, that's supposed to be a light bulb.
Okay,
Light bulb, security light, let's put it that way.
the security lights. Okay, whenever we started seeing some security lights out there. That changed the way that the landscape looked, Bob? I said, did that change the way the landscape looked? If you go out and drive around in the country today, you can certainly tell, and I imagine it was quite a bit darker before that. The combine.
That's, my dad was always involved in farm. He worked for Edward James Funkinson from the 40s, from 2040s, sold seed corn, and he was, I think he always had one of the first, or put in the first anhydrous ammonia plant in Illinois, and I imagine it was in the early 1950s. Would that make sense? He was into that real early.
Okay.
My brothers, by the time they were teenagers, were applying it and
Okay.
making a lot of summer money.
So you can put this together with
And
that.
also, the next thing that he amalgamated, he and my brother have always been in grain bins for years, too.
Okay, this is kind of a basic Ag 101 lecture, okay? I'm kind of rolling this all into one, but I think we're having a little fun. We're learning as we go. The rocket. I knew what that was. A grain bin. Okay. Grain storage.
Grain bins.
Okay. You think that made a difference in the way farmers were able to market their products? I can tell you that I went 3 years ago, had an opportunity to go with a team from Purdue and work with some farmers in Russia. And that right there, that is their limiting factor right now in agriculture. Of course, they have a very vast, rich land. They don't have much money, and so they don't have a lot of money for input costs. But this is one of their limiting features. They don't have any on-farm storage because when everything was a collective, it all went to the government-owned elevator in the city, and so they don't have on-farm storage. And so now that they're trying to privatize, that's one of their drawbacks, and we're just miles and miles ahead of them because of that.
My brother works for Farm Fan out of Indianapolis. He goes around the world. He's always going. Every country practically to sell.
Right. To put on-farm storage on, so that they can actually have control of their product and they can actually regulate it, because spoilage is a major problem in third world countries. Okay, I think we've got poison over here. That would be you. Okay.
That's about the time I remember chemicals. Maybe something more that I don't know, atrazine, I think that's.
Okay. You know what else was introduced about that time? You guys remember a book written by Rachel Carson? What was that called? Silent Spring. That's right. Okay, that was written a little bit later in the 60s. And what was she afraid of? She was basically afraid of a silent spring, wasn't she? She'd wake up and she wouldn't hear the birds sing or any of that other good sounds that we hear in the spring. That hasn't happened, has it? I think that there's a lot to be said for responsible farmers that we have, too. I'm not sure what.
It's supposed to be a helicopter or a crop dusting plane.
Okay, I knew a jet. He gets over more acres, okay? All right, crop dusting, chemical application, and I could probably go over here, and from 1960 until the mid-70s, we probably were making applications and nobody was licensed. Nobody really worried too much about it, did they, Jim? Matter of fact, they were probably exposed to some chemicals that, I'm not sure were probably the best that they were exposed to, but now, you have to do anything special now so you can buy chemicals?
Have to be licensed.
And you have really good teachers too, don't you?
I think they have the chemicals very much under control, very regulated. And you hear, even my own kids, sometimes I've heard them, not this one in particular, live in town, think that we use too many chemicals and doing all this damage. And I heard a report one time on the radio that the worst chemical abuse is by homeowners
That don't read the label.
what they do on their yard.
Right.
And usually they're the ones that think the farmers are really abusing.
And one of the things that I guess I'll go ahead and I'll put in my plug here for responsible chemical use, and I think that because agriculture is 2% of our population, and I think also because they are such a small group and we've got people that are removed from the farm. You know, we talked about how far away some of you guys are as far as having relatives that were even close to agriculture, that the public actually demands safer products. They demand food safety. We have some of the safest food of anywhere you go in the world, and I will attest to that. I mean, from where I was and saw some of the food preparation, and actually was in a bakery, believe me, we do have some of the safest food, probably the safest food anywhere. And one of the things that our farmers do now, instead of applying quarts per acre or gallons per acre, now we're putting on what? Ounces per acre on active ingredients, and so we're using quite a bit less. And I think it is probably a lot, the chemistry is much more conducive to a safe environment. Okay, so much for that preaching. What we got here? Oh, wait a minute. What is this?
That, in the interest of farm safety, is a slow-moving vehicle.
Slow-moving vehicle sign.
I think it was about 1960.
You're probably about right. Okay, farm safety. What are we doing over here?
What, the trees?
Yeah.
The taking down of the rows of trees and that and making larger.
Okay, we're getting rid of fence rows?
Yes.
Yeah, there was probably a famous Secretary of Agriculture that said something about farming from fence row to fence row, or he was going to get rid of all the fence rows. He was going to farm a lot, wasn't it? Okay, in the 70s, the 80s.
Irrigation, the great big things that look like monsters out in the field where I live.
Center pivot irrigation.
Yes.
Okay. What about down here? Has that changed the way we farm any? No-till? We started being concerned about losing topsoil and erosion. And I'll have to be honest with you that no-till, or at least minimum till adoption has really moved a lot faster in Jasper County since I've been here. But from what I hear, stories from back in the 60s and the 70s, they said that the air actually was just black in the spring if you got a lot of wind, and where people had actually tilled the soil. And some of you guys probably remember that. And you don't see that anymore. So we have had some changes as far as the way we farm. And then we go up here to the 90s. What's affected agriculture then?
That's speed, that's life, computer age, they get involved in farming.
Okay, precision agriculture. You start hearing about GIS and some of the applications that are going to actually be made, and we're going to have computers that are going to do that on the go. And boy, have we changed any? You better believe it. I mean, agriculture is a very dynamic thing, and when you say agriculture and people think, oh, that's just production farming, I'm here to tell you that a lot of things have changed in the past 100 years. Well, I think what I'm going to do now is go into the section where we're really going to talk about Hoosier Homesteads and this program, because this is really the kickoff. And I'm honored to be the first one to go, but you guys are going to be the program. I had a chance to see some of the program that you're going to see in a couple of weeks. And so I would encourage everybody to make sure that they come back and tell your neighbor, because it's only going to get better, because you're not going to have to see hand drawings, because I know that you're going to see some really neat photographs of the way things were, and you're also going to hear some of the true stories, some of the true life stories of what's going on out there in agriculture in some of our historic farms. Now let's see if I remember how to do this, okay? Hey, I did something right. And if we have enough time before I get done, I'll throw up a couple of other things. Because I do actually have a chart here that was in the Purdue handbook that talks about a standard day's work for a man and a horse and how much work you could actually accomplish. And I think that's kind of interesting too. You can actually do fall plowing, and you can actually plow 2.58 acres in a day, okay, with a standard man and a horse. So things have changed quite a bit.
Get pretty good at that.
Planting, if you guys want to know how long about planting, if you used a checker row planter, you could plant 17 acres in one day. And I'd be willing to bet you were probably pretty tired by the end of that day.
And get open each end, pull the rope, set it over here, put it in the back, put it back over there, do the same thing.
Were you tired when you were done?
Yeah.
I'll bet.
You can do a pretty good job of checking it, because you got it in the point rows, and when you got it in the point rows, that's the rock.
Okay, Hoosier Homestead Farms. This was actually created in 1976, so the award hasn't really been around all that long. But it was created in 1976 by then Lieutenant Governor Robert Orr. And it's a statewide program, and he decided he was going to name it the Hoosier Homestead Award. And it was going to recognize farms that had actually been in the same family for 100 years or more. And we've got several right here in the room, and to me that's fascinating to think that the ownership has stayed in that same family for at least 100 years. And these were the things that they were going to make this award based on, okay? It's going to be based on contributions made by the farm. You have to make the application, and you have to prove that this was your farm and it stayed in the ownership for all those years. And then you have to stress what the economic contributions of your farm were to the community, the cultural contributions, and also the social. And what I think is kind of neat is a lot of these guys that were named that, or their farms were named that, they're doing their part actually culturally and socially whenever they come do this program. So that is saying something for them. How many farms do you think in the state of Indiana we have that are Hoosier homesteads? And I will tell you that I just got the information from the Office of the Commissioner of Agriculture last week, and so this is very current information. I know that this is as updated as you could get. Any guess?
47.
47 farms, Indiana statewide? 3,485 certified as Hoosier homesteads in the state of Indiana. Okay? Ha! That's how many Hoosier homesteads we have. Look at this. 861 of those have retained ownership for greater than 150 years. And so those family farms have been around for a long, long time. The oldest homestead was owned by Edward Johnson, and that's not right. That should be wheat land. I typed wheat field. I faked you out, okay? You know, the reason I put that in there is because actually I came from Knox County. That's where I grew up. And so I had a little bit of, and it actually came from Wheatland, Indiana, and it was 1797. One of the things that the area that I grew up, you guys know where Wheatland is? You know where Knox County is? Who cares? It's actually one of the first the capital of the Northwest Territory. Does that help you out a little bit? Vincennes, Indiana. Okay, it was a very, very old French town, and it was settled very early, and so there are some very, very old farms in that area. Okay, to be recognized as a Hoosier homestead, first thing that you have to do is complete an application to the Indiana Office of the Commissioner of Agriculture, which everybody that you will hear from has done. And these are the guidelines that it takes. Okay, these are the following guidelines. The first one, and I probably a little too high. During a period of a year, it has to be at least 20 acres. I know that all the farms that you're going to hear from are a little larger than 20 acres, okay? They are what I would consider actively engaged in agriculture, and they are very viable farms. Second thing, well, they have to provide at least $1,000 in ag products. Somebody asked me, they said, well, what? I said, whenever you showed us the thing that said farm size, I said, how do you, what's a farm? I said, well, that's an interesting question, because the Census of Agriculture was just sent out. By law, people that received that have to fill it out. But I got a telephone call, and I guess I'm one generation removed from the farm now. My father is still actively involved in farming, and the family farm is still there. But I can't say that I actually make my living on the farm. I have enough animals that I can lose money and have fun doing it, okay? And it also gives my children a chance to actually take part in an agricultural production enterprise and learn some responsibilities, I think. But I'll probably never ever make my living on the farm. And so that farm, you know, I'm one generation that's going to be removed from it. But I have to fill out a Census of Ag form because they called me and they want to know if I had any animals. I said, yeah. I said, I've got a couple of 4-H pigs that we've bred. We're going to have pigs for the kids. I said, I've got a pony and 6 sheep. And they said, that's enough. That qualifies. You fill it out, okay? So I thought that was kind of interesting. And so to make a farm, and what the Census of Agriculture calls a farm, and really what this is quite different. The ownership has to have been in the same family for at least 100 years, and you have to have direct lineage. You have to be able to prove that. Lineage, okay? You have to be able to prove the line, okay, the family line. You have to be able to, the direct family relationship has to be established between the owner and the owner 100 years ago.
Does it have to have a house on it?
No.
It says live on it.
Okay, the next thing that you have to do is you have to document it. You have to prove it. Not unlike anything else that we have to do these days. But documentation has to be included with the application. You need to have an abstract or the conveyance of title, original tax records, anything like that that's going to verify. And they don't really want your original documents. They just want copies, and that's good enough. Then it'll be reviewed by the Office of the Commissioner of Agriculture. And then once they do that, they'll make their selections. Those that qualify will go on to Indianapolis and be awarded an estate ceremony at the State House. How many people actually went down and were part of that award? Was that kind of a neat ceremony to actually go and take part of that? That is, isn't it? How many people have actually been to Indianapolis and been in the State House? Come on, raise your hands. Okay. That's kind of a neat experience to actually go down to the State House and actually go in and to be a part of that and be honored. That makes it even better. You'll get a certificate that'll be signed by the governor and the lieutenant governor. It's going to carry your farm name, and it'll have the original purchase, and then the county, and then the state seal. Now, if anybody is interested in applying for that award, you can contact the Office of the Commissioner of Agriculture, and this is the telephone number you can call. If anybody is interested. Some of you are sitting there and thinking, boy, I really don't care about that. But anyway, that's where you would contact them. You can contact me in my office, and I can take care of that as well.
They changed the address.
They may have. I don't know where they were when some of you folks have applied. Meridian Street. This is what the application looks like. It's really not too difficult to... Can anybody see that? Or is that too tough to read? Essentially all you do is put down your name, your address, fill out all the information that they want. You put your documentation down. You can actually put your documentation, you'd show it down here, you sign it, and you have your daytime telephone number. And it's my understanding, after talking with a representative from the Commissioner of Agriculture's office, that once all those steps have been taken, I don't really think that they turn you down. If you can prove that you've actually got a Hoosier Homestead Farm, then you qualify, and then you'll take part in the program. Yes?
Does that award you any exception to the eminent domain in Indiana?
I didn't hear my question.
Indiana's eminent domain, they went to the highway to their property.
In other words, would it make it a historic site where they couldn't actually, for condemnation purposes or whatever?
An historic farm, right? But that was before 1976.
Okay, so it wasn't technically a Hoosier homestead. I don't know that that gives you any special rights or any special protection. My guess is that it probably doesn't.
Mike, are those certificates, is that what you see outside, or is that a special?
Okay, you can, and I didn't type up an overhead or put anything together, but for an additional fee, you can receive a nice, I think it's a 4x4 or 2x4 sign that says that you are an official Indiana Hoosier Homestead Farm, and you can put that up outside your place of residence. But yeah, they do charge an extra fee if you want to have that recognition all the time.
And there's one you put in the house too.
Right, they will give you the certificate that you can put in the house. And I think that one's the one, it's signed by both the governor and the lieutenant governor. Is that right, Jim? Okay. Any other questions?
Mike, we didn't go to the State House when we got ours. We went to the fairgrounds.
Okay.
I think they were renovating the inside of the state house in July. When we were there, that's why.
Okay, so they were doing some renovations. Yeah, according to the records that I have, and like I said, I do have an opportunity every couple of months to get together with one of the members, or actually an employee of the Office of the Commissioner of Agriculture, and according to her, that does still take place. Yeah, Steve?
Of those over 3,000 in the state of Indiana, you know, that makes a suggestion.
Yeah, I do. Now, it may take me a minute to pull this up, but I actually have a list. Here you go. These are the ones that are registered in Jasper County as Hoosier homesteads, and I haven't counted them. You might recognize some of these farms, and I'll just read down through them because it's not 20. I guess there's 25 total in Jasper County. 2 are greater than 150 years. There's the C. Owen Tullis Farm, the Edith Bargers Peters, Carl Jordan, Mark and Laura May Farm, Art Leahy, Josie Zacher, Hazel May Summer, Joe and Joyce Lane, Don Alter, Richard Smith, Jim and Susan Neasy, and Tom and Diane, and you'll hear from that farm. And actually, these are 2 separate farms, and actually, they're the Maryland Alter farm as well. Darwin Whited, George and Mary Alice Mall. I apologize on the pronunciation on some of this because I don't know. Ralph and Teresa Hensler, Louisa Randall, Lloyd Logan, and his actually, I believe, was the oldest in Jasper County. 1838 was the origination on that farm. Helen Goff and Winona Welch, David and Ruth Rowland, Nathan Eldridge Farm, Larry Barkley, that was another one, Bernie Haskell, Jim Moore, and Rowena Tyler Shaw. So there's your list from Jasper County. And you probably recognize some of those names because they're going to be presenters in some of the coming weeks.
Do they do a separate thing for 150 Hoosier Farms, or is it all?
Not that I'm aware of. I think it's just Hoosier Homestead. They just actually, she had actually taken them and said, okay, these are the oldest, and you actually have these that are over 150 years.
The Barclay Farm came in 1837.
1837?
That's when it was first opened up.
Okay.
Up there on the ridge in Barclay Township.
Mike, I thought there was a different, or an additional reward for anything over 150.
There may be, Jim. The only, I guess all I can say, I'm going to have to be honest with you here, that whenever I decided I was going to present this information on Hoosier Homestead, this is all that they gave me. And so I didn't ask them about any of the older farms or if there was any special recognition, and there may be, but I wouldn't be aware of it.
What? You've got a piece of ground, and it's owned by your mother or your father, and you live in town, you inherit it, does that go that way?
That's still lineage. I mean, that's still direct lineage.
That's still your farm?
Right.
When you inherit it, then you're...
It's still your family farm, and as long as you still own that and it's actively producing.
You got that, but then the Barclays and the Parsons came together in 1837, and they were some of the very first.
But yeah, I would encourage any of you, if you've got the documentation to prove it, go right ahead and make those.
I think a lot of them, at least as far as I know, I haven't seen any papers that would abstracts or deeds or anything like that they gave. I think they just passed it on and that was it.
I think, Missy, didn't you find some documentation at the courthouse when you were doing some research? Recorder saying
Well, yeah, you can go and you can get copies of their estates, their wills, and that's one way. Or the recorders you can find deeds and things, but.
When Mr. Mannigan and I were trying to contact a lot of these people, we didn't get the greatest response. We had actually originally tried to get 2 families per evening because we thought this is a lot of time to fill up. And some people were rather hesitant, thinking, no way can we do 2 hours worth of sharing. But as we see tonight how quickly the time goes when there's an interesting topic, and once the families are talking about something they love and care about, they have a lot to share. So if any of you, if you know of anyone who was on that list and who has changed their mind, I think we can still, you might incorporate more and at least...
Sure. All we have to do...
Interested to contact Mike.
Just let us know, and then what we'll do is split the time, because as a matter of fact, I've already got some of those split up. When alters are going to be here, there's also going to be some more information. June Pullins-Lang is going to be here, and she's going to...
Sisters are here tonight.
Okay.
Josie, right over here. And,
Okay.
And Mike Campbell's mom. I saw Mrs. Campbell.
Okay. But we're going to have a few extra people that are going to come in and present information, and I think it'll...
Yeah. And we're encouraging everybody to come back and participate. Like tonight, there's a lot of interaction going on here. It's been really fun.
Don and Dale, I know that Don told me whenever I first contacted him, he said there's no ways that I can talk about 3 minutes. And I know that his daughter-in-law told me different. She said, it'll take probably 3 or 4 hours by the time he gets done. Because he's got a lot of good information. And I actually have been on their farm, and I've seen some of the historic value that's there. And so you guys are going to be in for a real treasure, I think. And I would encourage you to keep coming back through the series. And that's all I've got tonight, so I guess I'll dismiss it at that.